Are there any, this is sort of a side question, but are there like any African, Mozambican, I don't know, trendy cultural stuff that like everyone just jumps on board of that you guys are like, wait, what?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely some of those here. Kind of from like our office building looks pretty nice, and we have a lot of people taking selfies out, in the front yard and
Yeah,
everything, just kind of
yeah.
funny.
Selfies are
But
universal.
selfies are
Selfies are
universal. Yeah.
universal.
The one I'm most proud of, they had this double cream yogurt in South
Ooh.
Africa, and I was like, that needs to jump the pond. And then, because I was like, this is so good. Why hasn't anybody done this in the US? And then like 3 years later, it was all over the place in the US.
Really?
So
That's
yeah,
interesting.
that
Wow.
was that was a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else
Let's
here?
see. I guess for a sad
Mhm.
bandwagon right now has been online gambling.
Oh yeah.
There's
Oh,
advertising for it all over the place, like even on the city buses are just plastered with
really?
ads.
Oh,
It's like the only thing that even advertises online. So if I'm
Yeah.
going to be scrolling anywhere online, the only ads I will see are for gambling sites and there's billboards and everything. And it has ruined so many people financially, and
mm,
it just keeps blossoming and growing and gaining more traction, even though it is destroying people's lives,
Yeah.
and has
oh,
led to like one of the highest, reasons for people commit suicide. And so
wow.
I'm appalled at this bandwagon, and
Yeah,
shocked that so many people keep jumping on it because there's like,
yeah,
oh, maybe this time it'll be my day, but
yeah,
no, it's going to ruin your day. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
It also has really affected the church here, particularly
Mm,
the prosperity gospel side of things, where it's like,
yeah,
follow Jesus, then you'll be blessed and highly favored. And,
right.
in the name of
yeah.
Jesus, everything you do will prosper. And then they're like, oh, so if I don't,
Jesus, I will gamble.
yeah, right.
Oh, yikes.
No, exactly. And so we've had to have that conversation with people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, similarly, Taylor Swift.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
your
That
bandwagon.
that
Yeah.
was my favorite. But no, she's not evil. I just um that is the one I feel like I've still yet to climb on that bandwagon. I do appreciate like there's a couple of songs that I really like, but other than that, I'm just like I don't get it. I don't
Don't
get
get the
all the
hype.
hype.
Yeah.
Don't get
Yeah,
it. But
she is quite a good entrepreneur too. So she's
that's
not
what
just a
you
singer.
yeah, that's what you
Yeah.
told me. So okay, tell the people about what she does. I didn't know this.
Oh yeah, well, I mean the thing that really amazed me with her was Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX were going around trying to find celebrities to
Promote.
promote their products,
Hmm.
and Taylor Swift and her team sent back a bunch of very like kind of critical due diligence questions, and they couldn't answer them, so they just never ended up sponsoring them, or, like doing all the ads and stuff, and it saved them from all of the headache that these other people went through, and that ended up not doing their homework first. So
Oh.
Taylor Swift was one of the first people to realize that FTX might not have everything together like they said they would. That was the huge Bitcoin scandal
Okay,
a
yeah, I
couple
was
years.
gonna ask. I don't know what FTX is,
Yeah,
but
should have
okay.
started with that. Yeah, so yeah, they did their homework. She doesn't promote something unless she really understands it, and so that's
Yeah,
Understands and believes in it.
understands and believes in it. Yeah. So
yeah.
that was
All
pretty
right.
smart.
Well, couple more points for Taylor. As you can see, we are also endorsing her on here, so she
Yay!
she lives on.
Even though you started it with a
I
negative.
know.
So
I know.
the last time I was back in the US, everybody was talking about Taylor Swift and football, and I was so lost. I
Yes,
had no idea what was
yes.
going
Well,
on.
let me catch you up. Okay, because y'all are Missourians, so you
Yeah.
should know this. You should. But Travis Kelce, he's one of the Chiefs' like main
Yeah.
players, tight end, maybe. Ooh, my dad will not like that. I don't know that. But he is engaged to Taylor Swift. And then
Oh,
there
they're
was
engaged
this,
now.
yeah,
Okay.
and there was this whole like sort of I don't know, conspiracy that this was all just a setup to get more views for NFL. And then and then people were like, no, I really think like they might be in love. Like it could be real.
Uh,
And people are like, no, this is an NFL scam. But
So is it getting more Swifties to watch football and more
Yeah.
football players to watch Taylor Swift, stuff or
I
listen to
don't
her
know.
music?
I don't know if it worked that way, but it did get a huge like female
Yeah.
audience in the NFL that they
Ah,
hadn't had
Really?
before. And so people were like, wow,
Now,
like
now how
look what
that's
she's doing
funny.
now.
now how many halftime shows does she do? Like, does she
She's
get
done a
discounts
couple.
for the Chiefs?
I I don't know. I mean, she goes to the games and they're always that was what when I was
Or is
getting
that
annoyed, where I was like, she is everywhere. Like I just want to watch
Mm,
my favorite football team and they keep
yeah.
doing like zoom in close-ups of Taylor Swift. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to watch football. To catch us up, so we were talking about before some of your philosophy with Equip Mozambique, and we were talking about the current model that you all use today. So can you let's just start with that you were talking about how the philosophy developed as you went on into what your current model is. So maybe if you can take our audience through that and how that all began.
Yeah, I'll start here. So, like we talked about before, we saw the model that we were kind of forced to use, I guess you could say, in the first organization that we were with. We just saw it not working. And that was this model of constantly giving handouts, constantly just giving, giving, giving. And we realized that, the whole give a man a fish, like, yes, you feed them for the day, but then tomorrow they're still hungry. And more importantly, they feel like they are now dependent on you. And you end up with this kind of patronizing situation with them where like they feel helpless, like they need you, and then you feel good about yourself, like, oh yes, you do need me. And we're like, this is broken, and this is it's breaking both sides, and it's just not sustainable. It's just not what Mozambique needs. And so when we left, we were like, well, we don't know what works, but we know that doesn't. And so we did a lot of research and prayer, and kind of read some books that helped us understand a little bit better how to approach poverty alleviation from a more long-term point of view, because of course the rest of the little saying goes, teach a man to fish, but that's very simplistic. And of course, in a very complex situation where you're dealing with generational poverty, not just like, and, society wide poverty, where you have very few people who are doing well, and the vast majority, like over two-thirds of the Mozambican population, is under the international poverty line of $2 a day or less. And so in a context like this, it's like, what does work? And so we, when we came back, we didn't really know what we would be doing. At first, we thought we might be starting a university, because we saw education as a huge need. And we thought, oh, well, maybe if they had some better skills or some better training, then that could make a big difference in their trajectory. But cutting that long story short, that didn't work. That didn't happen. We never did start a university. But just bit by bit, we started just kind of sitting down with people and realizing, little bit by bit, what would work. And so
Mhm.
so that's that
Yeah.
was that was kind of how we got started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a lot of research when we were back to in the States. We got to,
Hmm.
spend a lot of time at the university, pick a lot of people's brains about what might work, what not, might not. And for me at least, I was always kind of haunted by some particular stories from our experiences in Mozambique. I can remember a couple decisions I made where, we had somebody that was just really gung-ho and excited, to change their culture. And then I took something away from them, or the way I made a decision made it so that they felt like they didn't have ownership anymore. And that kind of haunted me. I was like, wait, like what's happening? Why don't people feel an ownership for their own, sometimes even their own backyards? And just a couple of years ago, we were out interviewing people in some of the poorest areas of Mozambique. And they were like, well, we don't even know that this land can't be taken from us. And my question was, why don't you plant fruit trees? Right. And they're like, well, it doesn't really matter, because we don't know if they'll be, we'll be here if the fruit tree survives. Right. And so there was no long-term kind of thinking. But then I started asking them, well, why is that? How long have you guys lived here? And some of them, they had been forced out of their homes from because a giant Chinese factory came in. Other people, there was a company that did a bunch of deforestation and they were thrown off their land. And so, what I started to realize is their mindset comes from a place of history. And yeah, in order to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world, like the US, you've got to have a lot of things going right. And in order to be one of the poorest, like Mozambique, you got to have a lot of things going wrong, right? So
A lot of things.
it's not just like when people say, "Why is Mozambique poor?" That's just not a great question for a couple of reasons. Number one, poverty is kind of the default, right? If you don't do anything, you just kind of sit around, then people will decline in poverty. So the real better question is, why are some people wealthy? But then, they're looking for just one simple answer, and it's really entire systems that are there. And so, but in order to simplify it, because I guess that's what we have to do, in Southern Africa, it's so much Jesus and jobs, right? So you got to change the mindset, and the church actually has a major element that they don't. You have it some in the U.S., but you need it a lot more here, and it's the extravagant hope that comes with faith. The ability to believe that you can be somebody else even if you don't see anyone else around you that's changing their life. And that's, we really have to see that transformation, with Carla's sewing ladies, people who lost everything because their husband passed away. They just completely lost hope. And when they start getting back that hope, then they're encouraged, they're motivated to try again. Now, and then the second part of that, the jobs part, is they need an actual staircase. So we call it building the staircase, right? They need a staircase that works, which is, how can they take themselves out of poverty? And if that doesn't work, then it's hope deferred makes the heart sick, and that's very much what ends up happening. And so oftentimes, if the gospel comes in without a project or a way to actually help people up, then they're kind of immune to it the next time it comes around. So we really much we very very much studied Jesus. He did everything right. So he promoted practical skills and real life problems, not just spiritual issues. And so he was very involved in the day to day of people. He showed people how to fish better. He multiplied food. He was in the day to day. He taught people how to shop, how to use money. Like it wasn't just that he was a spiritual leader. In fact, so much of what he did was outside of the temples. And for us in particular, we were in so many churches, and when prayer time came along, and maybe 50% of the church, some of these churches were youth looking for jobs, and it was just prayer after prayer of people, asking God for a job. And I'm sitting there like praying, like, but I can do that. I can help people get jobs, right? And I, yeah, it was just one of the big felt needs that Carl and I thought we can make this happen.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know.
That's so incredible. And it's interesting because I was telling you guys I've been reading a book about the Great Depression in America in the 1930s, and that's one of the main things is having hope when like people were perfectly capable of work, but they couldn't get work. And
Mm,
so yeah, I'm just curious I know we were talking before, John, about how
yeah,
the Lord really revealed to you like jobs was the thing to go after. Like there were a
mhm,
lot of different needs, whether it's medical or
yeah.
whatever, but jobs was the thing that the Lord placed on your all's heart.
Well, and
Um,
and it's, I
uh-huh.
mean, we talk Jesus and jobs, but we're actually more involved in entrepreneurship than we are
Yeah,
job creation,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a little bit different. So university prepares you for jobs that already exist,
Mm-hmm.
and entrepreneurship is an intensely creative thing that you're
Mm-hmm.
you're building something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of people here are, entrepreneurs by necessity,
Yeah,
not by calling, right? It's not because they
right.
want to, it's just because there's not enough opportunities
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to screen some entrepreneurship curriculum that I was considering adapting for here, and it was all talking about it's like, oh, when you're ready to leave your steady job and start something because you believe in it. And I was like, this doesn't fit my context. These
Yep.
people are not leaving steady jobs because they
Yeah.
believe in this cause. They
Yeah.
are like, I need food today.
Yeah. Yeah.
How am I going to get it?
Yeah. 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 Well, yeah,
Well,
so I was just gonna ask along those lines of
mhm.
how did that start to form of when you guys were like, okay, entrepreneurship is what we're called to, to help people become
Mm.
entrepreneurs. What did that look like?
Yeah, no, great question. And I won't even think it's an entrepreneur so much, but we're called to build an innovation lab, a place where people
Hmm.
can create and build. And I think in an ideal context, a single entrepreneur could really change things, right, and set the bar. But even in the West, so I found a statistic on this that 85% of your success as an entrepreneur is the ecosystem around you, right? It's the access to capital, it is the experience that you have around you. Do you have the technical capacity in your circle to make it happen? Or not. And so if you're starting things from scratch, you need lots of people actually. You need access to connections, you need access to people who believe in you. You need generational entrepreneurs. We were people that, second or third time through the ringer. And so that's why we're working on building more of an innovation lab where people can dream together. I think the other thing is in our context entrepreneurship is building the entire ecosystem from scratch. So usually in the US, it's, if you're a YouTuber, then you're building your product on something that already exists and on a platform that works. If you're drop shipping with Amazon, then you already have the shipment kind of system worked out. Here, you've got to build everything from scratch. You don't have those kind of ready-made partners, and those systems don't work. And so entrepreneurship can be a lot harder here because you got to build the rails.
It'd be a lot more creative.
Yes, it is. It is more creative. Sometimes it's harder working, but I think the number one thing that I've seen that we can bring is just an open access to knowledge and being able to listen to people, being able to point them in the right direction, and giving them access to information, knowledge, understanding,
Hmm.
trainings, and other things like that. So the American culture in particular is super open with sharing knowledge.
Mm.
We love to share what we've learned. We put all this stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
We love just teaching people how to do different things, and that is so rare actually in a Mozambican context. So I talked to a guy whose dad was a semi truck driver,
Mm.
and every time his dad would shift the gear shift, he would put his hat over the gear shift to make sure his son didn't know how to shift gears.
Didn't learn how to drive.
Yeah, so he couldn't learn how to drive and he couldn't take the family business. And when you get to something like that, and it comes from a mindset of scarcity. If you're afraid of your own son, taking over your.
Yeah, yeah. Early on, we read a book that really helped us. It was called African Friends and Money Matters.
Mm.
And it talked about that difference between, many African cultures versus many Western cultures,
Hmm.
where we freely will share our knowledge with one another. We're just like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, like sure. Like you asked
yeah.
me for advice or how I did some things, like how did you make that shirt? Oh, here, let me tell you the how I put this together.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we're totally fine with doing that, but then we're a lot more guarded with our possessions and our finances. And so, like,
Mm.
you don't see as many friends reaching out and saying, "Hey, can I get a loan?" or "Hey,
Right,
can I,
right. Yeah,
can you help spot me in a difficult situation?" Like, we just don't do that as much. There's not a whole lot
yeah.
of that transactional um, nature of our friendships. But here's
Hmm.
the exact opposite. Here,
Interesting.
everyone's very open with their finances and with their possessions. And it's like, oh
Uh-huh.
yeah, totally. Like I'll definitely contribute to your mom's funeral, or oh, I'll totally give you this loan that you need to start a business. And then
Yeah,
it's with this understanding is like I'll help you when you're in need, and then you'll
yeah,
help me when I'm in need.
yeah,
But
yeah.
at the same time, they are very guarded on their knowledge because they do see
Mm-hmm.
that whole like knowledge is power and then the scarcity
Mm-hmm.
mindset. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
why would I share that? Like
Yeah.
that's my bread and butter. Like that
Yeah.
is more important to me than the money
Yeah.
in my bank account.
Yeah, yeah. So good. So just what you all created with like learning to think like an entrepreneur is a skill in itself. So tell me about you guys have four different processes that you take people through so that they can become an entrepreneur, can start literally from scratch. I mean, we think we're starting from scratch in America, but it's a whole new level there. But yeah, tell me about like what that process is like and how that kept developing.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So, and honestly, I want to broaden it out from entrepreneurship to basically
Hmm.
any problem solving
Mm.
perspective, because that's really
Hmm.
how we approach this. Is it's not just, how do I start business or something like that, but how do I become a part of a solution to a problem? And so the first step in that process is what we call discover. And so we deeply value the first step being deeply researching and knowing the need deeply, the problem deeply, and also the context deeply. And so you got to discover the right people in the right place at the right time, and make sure you know what's causing things, not just looking at symptoms, but looking at causes and going down to the roots. And so.
And this one's really important. I think it's the number one step that everybody misses in entrepreneurship. Everybody
Yeah.
has an idea and then they go hunting for the reason why that, people have to buy that idea. And you really want to go do interviews. You want to find people's felt needs. Like, where do people actually have problems and how can you build systems that actually help out there? So the
Mhm.
discovery process, even in the US, is pretty stunted compared to what it can be. And here I love throwing people into the deep end and just saying, okay, go interview some people. Interview people that want to use your product. Are you inventing a need for them, or do they is your solution actually something that can help them?
Reminds me of the inventor of the Segway, where he's just
Yeah.
like, "This is going to revolutionize transportation," and everyone's like, "No, it's not. That's dumb." But anyway, so step one, discover. Like discover the needs,
Yeah.
discover the root causes of those needs. And the second step that we like to follow is partner. Because we see so many times, if I see a problem or a need, I'm probably not the only person who has noticed it. And I will probably also not be able to solve it by myself. And so we always want to encourage people to work together. I know John just talked about how it's hard to get people to work together, but we emphasize it.
Yeah.
Even if it is countercultural, we want to see people being the body of Christ and coming together. It's like, oh, you have a gift in finances, and I have a gift in public speaking, and so you handle the money, and then I will handle the publicity, and finding ways that you can work together. And so there's a lovely African proverb that says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." And we want to see people go far, and so we really emphasize that, find other people, surround yourself with the right people who are going to make this a success.
Yeah. Just another thing with partnership. It's a kind of a bit of an entrepreneurial myth that about the lone entrepreneur, right? So most of the people that you really know, even though they might have a myth and legend about them being the lone entrepreneur, they don't do it alone at all. And it's way more about finding the right people in the right places and putting them
Mhm.
together in a way that can really move things forward. So I see it very much as building a fire. How do we find the right people and put them together in the right way that something can really take off? So,
Mhm.
the spark is the idea, but then you got to grow it into something bigger. And for us, a lot of this comes from the discovery process, right? When we just start asking around and we really listen to people, the partnerships start naturally forming when you start hearing, the heart cry of different people. And we've seen this just so often. I can remember one time after we were working with the ladies, and one of my big questions it was not why are there so many widows, but why are there so many really, really poor widows? And then I was talking to one of my friends who worked in banking, and I was just asking him about some things, and the whole concept of payable on death came up, and I was like, well, like what happens there? And he's like, well, it's a bit of an open secret that if your husband dies, then we just kind of take all the money in his bank account, whereas that's completely illegal in most other countries. And so, it was a pretty easy thing for us to go around telling everybody, put a payable on death on your bank account. And it saved so much pain and just so many things like that. There are actually simple solutions that will never turn into a full business, but like that's how you solve problems, right? Yeah.
Which kind of takes us into our third step
Hmm.
there, which is innovate.
Yes.
So if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you will never get new results. And so we love to get people to think out of the box and brainstorm and try something new. And if that doesn't work, try something else. And teaching that pivoting is totally okay. In fact, encouraged. I met a guy who's an investor, and he said, "I will always invest in a failed entrepreneur before I'll invest in a fresh entrepreneur." And so he's like, I want to see that you've tried something, and so we always like to encourage people, be creative, come up with solutions that are out of the box. And because we as an organization can kind of give a little bit of that partnership and that safety nets, they are starting to feel a little more free to do that because it is not a super innovative culture. Like they're very much like, traditional, let's follow the way things have always been. Let's do things, the way my grandparents always did. And so getting people to think out of the box can be a process. But that's how generational problems can get solved, is when you can look at things with fresh eyes.
Yeah, and part of that too is taking risks. So,
Yeah.
bandwagons that we have jumped on. If you remember the whole wrong answers only kind of, meme things on social media. I love that. Just going in and saying, hey, I want solutions for this, but wrong answers only, just to like get people free from this always having to say the right thing and still be in a creative, environment. And yeah, so we love to innovate, we love to pivot, and we love to be a safe place to fail. We talk about that a lot too. So, as long as we learn. So, and I tell people that, okay, the one time failure is not a problem. If you do it twice, then yeah, we've
But then we'll have a
we'll
talk.
have
Can I share a funny story on that real
yeah,
quick?
sure.
Okay.
Oh.
So the whole wrong answers only, like we had an uber creative brainstorming session, and you know where this one's
I
going.
know where this one's going.
So one thing that people were talking about was, in some of the rural areas, people love eating rats.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's your context: is they love eating rats to the point where they will burn a field, like they'll burn the perimeter to kind of like scare the rats into the middle so they can catch all the rats. But sometimes these fires go out of control and burn down entire villages, or burn like go wild and burn tons of forest and stuff. And so our guys were thinking is like, hey, maybe as part of our agriculture training, we should teach people that instead of like burning your fields to catch the rats, let's just start rat farms and raise domestic rats, and then you can eat your domestic rats that have been raised in your little barn, and then you don't have to burn the village down. And it was just kind of this fun conversation about rat farms, and so that was super innovative. Hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah.
again, one of those fun kind of creative
Yeah.
brainstorming things that we did.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask, did it take off? Like Rat
No,
Farms LLC?
not yet.
No.
Yeah, don't know if it
Amazing.
will, but that was
Yeah,
that.
there's other issues with that one.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But yes, we like to
Still
be innovative. We
troubleshooting.
like to
Yeah.
be creative.
I love it. I love it. Reminds me of one of my favorite fictional characters, Mrs. Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. She said,
Yes,
Oh yeah.
learn, make mistakes.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, so also have to realize how kind of unique that is in an American context.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
really good about innovating, and for me, it's the family structure that really helps out. So you don't know
Yeah.
how blessed you are in the US to have a family
Yes.
that, when you're like, hey, I want to try blank, then people will like be like, go for it.
Yeah.
And even if they think it's a phase, they'll still encourage you in it. And then here, if you want to start a business, then everybody's like, why aren't you, go be a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, right? It's the same kind
Mm-hmm.
of,
Yeah.
thing you
Yeah.
get from, a lot of Asian communities have the same
Yeah. Yep.
same structure.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, so it's very difficult. And we live in a culture in the US. If somebody tells me this mountain's never been climbed, that makes me want to climb the mountain even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
here, if I tell somebody this mountain's never been climbed, then they'll be like, oh, well, there's a reason, and I'm not going to ask any more questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of those just kind of really stimulates creative
Mm-hmm.
ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're building a culture of that. That's one of the things we
Yeah.
have just because of the culture we came from.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, so we've covered three steps so far. So
Yeah,
it's
I was about to
discover,
ask, so what's the
yeah,
last
yes,
one?
yep, discover, partner, innovate, and then the last step is empower. And this is really where we feel like our synergy of coming in as foreigners really helps. Because we want to make sure that, after they have discovered this problem and found the right partners, and even if it's not us, and innovated this creative idea, that they have the resources that they need to make it happen. And by resources, that might be training. Like, do you know everything you need to know to make this a reality? It might be finances, it might be, infrastructure, it might be equipment or whatever. But, so many times, people just get stuck at that last phase of like, okay, I've got this great idea and I have so much traction, but then how do I make this real? And
Hmm.
and so we've been able to help a lot of people with that last step of empowering them. And so just making sure that they have the knowledge, the resources, the team. And sometimes we are like, you know, and it's kind of an iterative like process where, we move up and down the ladder. It's not necessarily a step one, step two, step three type thing. So part of empowering them might be creating a new partnership and say, oh, well, you're trying to do this. We know this other org doing, something similar, but not exactly the same. Maybe you can figure out how you can work together on that, and just different ways like that we empower people with the connections that they need to turn their awesome, innovative ideas into realities.
Hmm.
And so, discover, partner, innovate, empower. Those are the four steps that we have been developing kind of from scratch over the years that we've been running Equip Mozambique, and seems to be working for us.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it's like fully from scratch, but I can remember in 2014 we left with Discover, Partner, and Power was like our three,
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
three-step process. We added Innovate a little bit later.
Yeah.
But empowerment was chosen for a very real reason, for a couple reasons. One of them was you they already have what they need to succeed, right, between them and God and their communities. And it's not our vision that we're imputing in their life, right? They've already
Yeah.
got this where they want to go,
Mm-hmm.
but they might need some help and some resourcing in terms of getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that Carla didn't talk about, but is the number one thing people say, like in the US, people focus on the projects we do.
Mm-hmm.
In Mozambique, people focus on that we're the first people to believe in them. And
Mm.
so that's the number one thing I'll hear from
Yeah.
the people who were successful, the people that started their
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
things, is we believed in them before they
Yeah.
even saw it in themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's an empowerment too. Just believing in
Mm-hmm.
somebody is an
Yeah.
incredible you can give them.
It's like you guys became the family system that you were talking about, that they're like, because that's so important in
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right. And
Hmm.
and like John, like we were saying earlier about the whole knowledge sharing, like we very blatantly break that
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
it within our Oregon. We tell people like, hey, like if you have learned something, you must go teach someone else what
Mm.
you have learned. And we try to emphasize the whole pay it
Yeah.
forward, and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
freely you've received, freely
Yeah.
give. Like
It breaks
this is biblical.
scarcity.
Jesus
Yeah.
said this. And
Hmm.
so we want to make sure that we're breaking off that kind
Yeah.
of knowledge guarding selfishness that
Yeah.
can be so prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if somebody comes to us with a business idea, I usually sit down with them for, 30, 45 minutes to
Hmm.
really understand what they're trying to do. And
Hmm.
I ask, 4 to 5 questions that can help them understand where, and help them understand where they're stuck. I try to introduce them to a couple people, either here in
Hmm.
Mozambique or internationally, that are either doing the same thing or can be a good resource.
Yeah.
And then more, I used to recommend a bunch of books, and we still do because we've got a library.
Yeah.
But I'll
Yes.
also recommend a YouTube video or two
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the training. So all of those are kind of steps to empowerment.
Mhm.
Yeah. So looping back to what we were talking about a little bit at the beginning about ownership, how have you guys
Hmm.
found, like, as you take people through this process, that it builds ownership over their livelihood, over their land, over their, over everything? How does that shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most people now don't naturally have ownership.
Mhm.
And we just kind of talk about the rental culture versus the purchase culture. From
Yeah.
the older generations where you used to buy everything, and now you can just kind of rent it and live there. But ownership seems to come very strongly with hope, as well. So hope, and then that, when we don't do it for them, but they do it for themselves,
Hmm.
right? So when we teach somebody to fish, they are so proud of that fish versus
Hmm.
if we gave them a fish,
Hmm.
right? The amount that they fight for it is just unbelievably different, in the sewing school.
Uh, I think one of a really touching story for me. So we at the end of our sewing school, like at the graduation, they all get to take home a sewing machine that they earned with their own hard work. And so
Hmm.
like they make products, we sell them, and then they get the profits so that, then they can save up to own a machine that they have put their, sweats and tears into,
Yeah.
sometimes blood too, if they prick themselves with a needle. But anyway, we had a gigantic cyclone a few years ago, and some of the ladies were telling me afterwards, they were like, I didn't care if I lost my whole house. I was clutching that sewing machine because I knew that
Yeah.
that was my future. And just so they
Yeah.
did have that deep sense of ownership. It was like, okay,
Mm.
like I could lose everything, but I can rebuild everything if I can keep this. And
Yeah.
so they spent
Yeah.
the whole night with all the wind and the rains and the floods, just like, gotta keep my sewing machine safe.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
That's,
and
yeah.
just compare that to other organizations we know where there's an entire pallet of sewing machines just sitting there. You're like,
Hmm.
okay, which
Hmm.
one of these is showing more ownership?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
So
huge,
good.
huge thing.
I, sometimes I think, we think as the gospel, like we have to make everything spiritual, but like you guys were
Mhm.
talking about at the beginning, it's so practical, and
Yeah.
what you do each day is discipleship in the way of solving problems of entrepreneurship and these kinds of things. But can you talk just a little bit about how you've seen, I guess, like the culture building of
Mhm.
hope and people having restored faith, after going
Mhm.
through the hardest of times, things like that?
Yeah. So for us, one of the surprise things that happens, and I think we don't do this enough in the US, but look back on the things that God has already done with you and look back
Hmm.
and see, see how he's worked in you, what has
Yeah.
worked, and then kind of reverse engineer that a little bit.
Yeah.
But a major element in Equip Mozambique has always been the community, a community of people that are victorious and cheering you on, that don't backbite, that are like, if you are blessed, then they're excited and encourage you on
Yeah.
that. If you have an idea, then we'll make it happen, even though we have ideas of our own.
Hmm.
And that kind of community is really, really valuable.
Hmm.
In order, and it's something that we only learned after having it happen, right? So most of the
Yeah.
time in the US, like I talked about, we're very individualistic. And
Hmm.
I'll give you a great example of vision casting. If I vision cast with only one person, and I would say, well, what do you want your business to build?
Hmm.
I don't get nearly the energy as if I take 3 or 4 people and say, hey, what do you want to build, and how can that impact your community?
Hmm.
right? And when you're doing it, when you're doing vision casting as a community or a group here, it just hits different.
Hmm.
And people are encouraged, they're motivated, and they all keep each other on track. And so
Yeah.
community vision casting is something that we've really,
Mm.
really got behind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hope that wasn't too far off your question.
No, no, that's great. Yeah. I think Americans can learn a lot from Africans in that way.
Well, and in many ways, the younger generations are more communal in
Yeah.
focus,
Yeah.
and
That is
there's a
true.
deep desire for community,
Yeah.
even if they don't have it like right then. And yeah,
And
and
authenticity.
authenticity.
Yeah.
That's another big
Yeah.
one. People looking for authenticity.
Yeah. People are starving for community here.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked at how many people just come into our library because they want another place to talk to people.
Mm.
Right? There's just not that many kind of community spaces anymore, but it's so
Mm.
good to see,
Yeah.
people come in just for that connection.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. For sure. Maybe as we close, if you guys want to tell us one thing that you'd like to leave the audience with for this episode.
I think, one of the things that I like to encourage our American audience, whenever we're speaking at churches and stuff, is we don't want you to walk away thinking it's like, oh, well, that's working in Mozambique, or Jon and Carla are doing great. I want you to think, oh, I could do that too. And I would love for everyone to walk away feeling like they could be a problem solver. If you see
Hmm.
something that's not quite right in your own community, in your own, it can be just your neighborhood, think, deeply about it. Like if you can discover what's needed there,
Hmm.
and then, maybe find someone else who has noticed that problem, and instead of just griping about it together, innovate something that can be a solution, and then find out what you need to be empowered. And so we want everyone to walk away thinking like, oh, I could do that. And
Hmm.
so like this is a pathway, a process that can be, revolutionary
Yeah.
in so
Yeah.
many different contexts. And so just want everyone to walk away thinking, I can do that.
yeah. And for me, I think just going through all of these different points, the discover, the partner, the innovate, and empower. When I take Mozambicans through it, the number one thing I love to hear is, "Oh, I could have done that." Right?
Mm.
When
Sounds easy.
that sounds easy. Well, it's not just that sounds easy, but oh, when you show it to me, that is easy.
Hmm.
And I used to think that God was after the hard things, but
Mm.
He's actually after the easy things that nobody else does. Right? The ones that are right in front of
Yeah.
us. The habits, and our day to day. Like God wants to work with you where you're at,
Mm.
in the day to day, and
Mm-hmm.
there's people around you that need what you have.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the discovery process is so empowering because you find places where you have something that somebody else needs, and then you
Hmm.
find assets that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your own life, in a community. And yeah, it's amazing to me because what you can do is build a community that is so much stronger than just the individual person.
And just so our audience remembers, if you're interested in getting involved with Equip Mozambique, there is equipmos.org, and there's ways to sign up for the newsletter. There's ways to donate. There's all different ways to get involved, and then of course on socials is at Equip Moz, and you can follow along there. We're going to have little pieces of our podcast being promoted through there, and you can also keep up with all the amazing projects that Jon and Carla and team are up to there. So, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in episode 4.
Until
Yeah.
next time.